All right. Calgary. I should get a Calgary pennant up here. And behold, it was so. Okay, so Calgary's tough. So I'm going to talk about my all Calgary team in terms of my favorite players and my least favorite. And I can't have Jalina in my favorites, not because Jalina wasn't one of my favorite players, but because I consider him a Canuck. What he did in Calgary was simply because Vancouver was too stupid to keep him. They traded him when they shouldn't have. He went to Carolina, he went to Calgary. They should never have traded Martin Jalina. Love the guy. I won't make him a flame, though, because for me, he's still a Canuck. And always a Canuck. I'm not going to have a lot of names up here for guys I like. Because Calgary I've had a love-hate relationship with. In the mid-'80s, I was a big fan. Early 80s, I liked them. Late 80s, that changed. 1989, that changed. We'll get into that. So my favorite forwards, and it's going to be 3. I'm not having a stroke. Gary Roberts. Does it even look like a Roberts? It's close. Joe Nieuwendyk. And Jarome Iginla. And I believe Nieuwendyk's in the Hall of Fame. Iginla's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And Gary Roberts should be in the Hall of Fame. If not for what he's done as a player. And I'm fine with people saying his career didn't qualify. But for what he's done as a builder, for what he's done for helping guys reclaim their careers, for all the work he's done helping guys with their conditioning in the off seasons and in summers, Roberts is a legend. Nieuwendyk was a center that I respected in Calgary. Fantastic scorer. Kind of forgotten because later on in his career, he didn't maintain that scoring level, but still very, very good goal scorer in his career. And Jarome Iginla, the best compliment I could give Iginla is that whenever Vancouver played against Calgary, I wanted Vancouver not to bother Iginla. Leave him alone. Don't hit him. Don't chirp at him. Just leave him be and let him sleep. Because anytime somebody chirped him or hit him or something happened that upset him, he'd run the rest of the game. He was so powerful and so temperamental, and his battles with Bieksa was a big one for Iginla. They usually had their go-arounds. And, yeah, it was... and Kessler and Iginla didn't like each other. Basically, Vancouver and Calgary have had this hate relationship for a long time. So it is hard for me to pick guys that I really like. Probably not surprising that Roberts and Nieuwendyk are older players, and Iginla's on his way out. Where's Johnny Gaudreau? He would not trump any of these guys. Sean Monahan would not trump any of these guys. Wouldn't pull them out of the list. Defensively, it gets really tough because Pekka Radicalio had the greatest name in the history of hockey, as far as I'm concerned. Pekka Radicalio. And then actually had a semi-successful European career as a coach. Who knew? Until I looked him up. I looked him up a couple months ago. I was like, wow, he actually coached. He had a good long career. If Pekka had played his entire career in the NHL, if he had played during the high-scoring 80s more than he did, he'd have probably over 800 career points, and I think he would be discussed more in terms of really solid offensive defensemen of the 80s. But if you're going to talk about solid offensive defensemen and guys that I respected, Al MacInnis and Gary Suter. Not Ryan, Gary Suter. So in this case, I can say Gary Suter. Yay! I do remember the Gary Suter hit, which I believe was in the Canada Cup against Wayne Gretzky. Hurt his back. Took Gretz out for a while. It was hard not to be angry with Gary Suter for that hit. Rightfully so. It was borderline. And when you're hitting the best player in the game, it's going to upset some people. And while I wasn't a fan of Gretzky, I didn't want to see him get hurt either. So, that being said, McInnes, the best power play shooting point man I've ever seen. His shot, I think, scared the crap out of everybody, even his teammates. And Suter, really solid, fantastic defenseman. I even look. Part of the reason that I confuse the two is because Ryan Suter's career reminds me so much of Gary's. When Gary left Calgary, there was, without McInnes, and yet he was really good. I'm pretty sure he played in San Jose and then played Chicago as well. He was a really good defenseman even when he moved on from the cushy job in Calgary. Goaltender. I actually thought this over. The kid in me wanted to pick Pat Riggin. Not a word of a lie. The Bruins fan in me wanted to pick Reggie Lemelin. The Nordiques fan in me wanted to pick Dan Bouchard. Kiprusoff. And it's Kiprusoff because when he was dealt away from San Jose felt that he was the one they could do away with and keep Nabokov and Toskala. Kiprusoff had middling stats at best in the NHL before he went to Calgary. And the story in Calgary became the story. He carried that franchise. Him and Iginla carried them. And towards the end of their time in Calgary, they also prevented Calgary from bottoming out and getting really good draft picks during a couple of seasons there, when Calgary fans were really anxious for a rebuild. But Iginla and Kiprusoff were good enough to keep them those few spaces ahead of what they needed to be to do that proper rebuild. But man, I tell you, when Kiprusoff was on his game and Iginla was terrorizing players on the ice, they were great. So who didn't I like? I'm a Canucks fan. Joel Otto. He kicked the puck in. 1989. Oh, I've told this story before. You guys know where this is going. You guys know exactly where this is going. To the point where I thought, I'm going to put Jim Poplinski in there just for something different. I'll put Jamie McCowan in there just for something different. Nah. Joel Otto, 1989 overtime. Canucks fans will say he kicked the puck in. Flames fans will say it's incidental. I was 16 when it happened. The emotional 16-year-old in me says he kicked the puck in. Flames fans, you're fine with disagreeing with me. It's not a big deal. But I didn't like Joel Otto. I really didn't like Joel Otto. And the only other forward, and I'm going to qualify this. Okay, so before anybody starts typing away in the comments, I didn't like Theoren Fleury when he was a Calgary Flame. I absolutely believe that Theoren Fleury right now belongs in the Hall of Fame. I admire Theoren Fleury for his courage and coming out and talking about the personal difficulties he had. I admire Theoren Fleury for trying to help other youth who are going through the same thing or similar things. I admire Theoren Fleury for admitting weakness in a sport that is so full of bravado and manly men and macho, and you don't admit to being upset, you don't admit to crying, and you don't admit to mental problems. I admire Theoren Fleury now. I hated him then. Couldn't stand him back then. Fleury was a player that every time he was on the ice, I was like, man, I wish somebody'd drill him. This is hatred out of respect, too. That's the thing. I think there's a lot of people who hate Sidney Crosby who really actually respect him quite a bit. And in the case of Joel Otto, if he'd been a Canuck, I would have loved him. But man, I hated that they took the Canucks out. I hated it. And in that, on the same topic, the snake. That's what they wrote in the province after the Canucks lost in Game 7 in 1989. That Mike Vernon's glove was the snake. And it snatched away any hopes the Canucks had for getting to round 2 that year. Mike Vernon absolutely was a beast in 89. And I hated him so much. I really, really did. As a Canuck fan, I hated Vernon. Again, came to respect Vernon later, and loved that he won a Stanley Cup with Detroit after he was basically written off as being done as a starter. Mike Vernon, kind of a forgotten guy in terms of legends and who's going to make the Hall of Fame. Vernon doesn't get talked about much when it comes to the whole legends thing. With Calgary, he absolutely does. But as a Canuck fan, and again, I'm wearing Calgary colors as I do for teams in this series. But man, Otto, Fleury, Vernon. Stupid 1989. Stupid. But the Calgary was a pretty damn good team back then. And when the Canucks were not very good, it was really easy to hate the other team. It was really good at the other end. Now it's a little different. But back then, yeah. But yeah, Gary Roberts, Nieuwendyk, Iginla, Radicalio, McInnes, Suter. Because I couldn't leave. I could never get Radicalio and McInnes because immediately Calgary fans would be like, well, where's Suter? Suter I enjoyed. I did. Gary Suter was a very good defenseman. And Kipper, I can't say anything bad about Kipper. I really can't. They rode him like a government mule. And he played fantastic hockey, for the most part. There were times where he wore down, and I felt bad for him. And I felt bad for him, even though I couldn't stand the Flames at the time. So anyways, let me know your list. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. It's my first Canadian team that I've done in this series. I'm doing 2 today because I got to make up some ground. I really haven't been doing this as I had planned to. My holidays kind of threw off my video planning, but the new board helps, and being able to put the pennants of each team at the top helps. So let me know what you guys think, and again, I will talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.